Boyd dreamed of siphoned ink and salty bloodshed. In his nightmare, the cephian was back with his old unit, and the horde of aquatic warriors was swimming madly across the ocean floor, their tentacles flailing in unison, their beaks open in a watery war song. Boyd was young in the dream, and his iron spear was newly forged, its tip unnotched and deadly sharp. And as his unit reached the enemy line, he thrust out his weapon and felt its blade pierce through rubbery skin and rigid chitin as he skewered foe after foe. Again and again the cephian armies clashed, like waves beneath the waves, until the sea around them swirled dim and murky with thousands of severed tentacles, the bright blue of blood and the slick black of cephian ink. The old fella awoke, haunted by the seaborne screams in his nightmare. He opened his eyes, and while his pupils adjusted to the sunrise brightening the water around him, Boyd slid out from under his blanket, which was pinned to the sea floor. He drifted for nearly a minute in his open-roofed room, letting his 8 tentacles float in gentle arcs around him. That savage memory, recalled in his nightmare, refused to leave his waking mind, and within his high-crested head, Boyd's brain, his stomach, and his 3 hearts all burned with the sharp agony of deep remorse. Old age was never easy, but Boyd could handle the aches and pains, the stiffness in his tentacles, the wrinkles in his green skin. But the pain of looking back at the sins of his youth, that was the hardest part. Something nudged his side.
"All right, Yipsy. I'm up, girl. I'm up,"
Boyd said to his pet Tharix, scratching her behind the gills. The 6-legged Tharix sniffed in the water, then kicked off the sandy floor into a playful backflip. Boyd swam to the kitchen corner of his rented room and prepared Yipsy a breakfast of shredded sponge with krill paste.
"How about you, girl? You ever had bad dreams? I hope not. They ain't fun."
He breathed in deep through his gills, then sighed through his beaked mouth.
"Ain't no place for old Boyd, not even in sleep."
Yipsy gobbled up her breakfast, then began to corkscrew around the room, her webbed paws kicking. Boyd watched her play while he snacked on a shrimp kebab. The sun was brighter now. He could see its white face warbling through the ocean surface, 10 meters above them, warming up the planet of Garsek as it ascended into the cerulean sky beyond the world's silver rings. Someone pulled aside his curtained door. A long head and pair of beady, goggled eyes appeared from the alley.
"You'd best be getting ready, Boyd. Trouble's a-brewin',"
said the nervous voice of Blanche, who rented the room next door. Boyd grimaced, annoyed that his young neighbor had barged in without first announcing himself. Though, all in all, Blanche wasn't too bad. He was new in town, a recent migrant from the Arctic, and his skin's baseline color was pale blue, in contrast to Boyd's deep green.
"Trouble's brewin', you say?"
muttered Boyd, plucking off the last shrimp and flicking it through the water to Yipsy.
"And what vintage of trouble might that be, Blanche?"
Blanche swam into the room, shutting the curtain behind him with a tentacle tip.
"The big, red, and angry kind. We got one here in town, Boyd. Right now. A real, live, female." "So? Last I checked, this little frontier town has 2 females. Or haven't you had the pleasure of meeting our lovely landladies?"
"I'm not talking about those old dried-up birther chromes. This female arrived last night from Seamount, and she's dressed like one of them Imperial guards. She's the real deal."
Boyd considered this unexpected news, circling one tentacle so that Yipsy swam and spun in pursuit.
"From the capital, you say?
Boyd had never been to Seamount. Only females were allowed through its gates. But that towering metropolis, with its mysterious technological wonders, was the stuff of legends among the males.
Now, what would the Imperials want with us, all the way out here?"
Blanche's pimply brow wrinkled nervously, and his skin went rather translucent.
"Nothing good, that's for sure."
"Well, alrighty then,"
grumbled Boyd, departing the room with Blanche and leaving Yipsy to perform her playful acrobatics alone. The two cephian males swam down the labyrinthine alleyways, their heads bowed, their tentacles streaming behind them, past 100 shabby rooms with open roofs and curtain doors, then into the sandy basin on the edge of town, which served as the local meeting place. Most of everyone was already there, just over 100 males, some blue, some green, some purple, and all with their tentacles tensed upon the seafloor in anxious apprehension. Boyd looked up and spotted the newly arrived female. She was hard to miss. At over 2 meters long from crest to tentacle tip, she was twice the size of the males. She floated in place, up near the surface, her long crimson tentacles wriggling out to every side, and she stared down at the assembling males with her dark gaze. Boyd clicked his beak thoughtfully, watching her. The female had the rich red skin of a sea mountain. She wore golden rings looped through the frills on either side of her head, and had an iridescent medallion on her brow, engraved with the symbol of the Gnostic Empire, a star with 8 webbed points.
I'll be damned to the deep,
Boyd muttered, taking a spot next to Blanche on the edge of the crowd.
A true Imperial Guard. I ain't never seen one before, and I've seen a lot.
When the last male in the town arrived, the female's skin went glass smooth, and she opened her beak to speak to the assembly.
I am Quarter Matron Purveyor Zuva of Seamount, sworn servant of the 8 High Queens,
she announced, revolving to address them all.
Seeing as this wretched little shanty town of yours is not connected to the Imperial Cable Network, it falls to me to report to you all that war is coming.
The males gasped, their skin rippling in surprise, their eyes bulging.
The Darkwave Republics have amassed an army and have crossed our imperial border to the west. They would seek to claim the Gnostic seas and isles for themselves, and if we do not stop them, then all of Garsek is under threat to Darkwave subjugation.
The audience gasped and whispered in low voices to one another.
The Republic's troops now hold the trenches at Kalokali, which our empire relies on for iron. Without the volcanic forges in that deep, we will have no new weapons with which to fight back. We must strike, brutally fast and without mercy, unleashing the sacred judgment of our spears.
A few of the males cheered, but most looked troubled.
But we're not soldiers,
called out someone to Boyd's right.
We're migrant laborers, my lady. We go where there's work, not into battle.
Many others called out in support. Above them, the female waited for silence.
You will all do whatever, and we'll all go wherever the High Queens deem it necessary,
said Matron Zuva, her voice a threatening whisper. That shut up the crowd.
However, it is not your fate to be sent to battle. Not yet, anyway. This is a scouting town, is it not? And scouts can play a vital role in the war effort. That is why I have come, to oversee your efforts.
Her dark gaze cut through the males, their skin bleaching in fear.
Yours is a pitiful crew. In the past year, you have found no oil and hardly any ore out on the dries. And no wonder.
Her red skin rippled angrily.
I know your type. You are vagabonds, miscreants, drunkards. You float from job to job, scouting, mining, building, without care or devotion. You want only coins in your knapsacks and berry in your bellies. Well, that all stops today. You answer to me now.
But what about Boss Wog?
Another male called out.
Why isn't he at this meeting?
Zuva stopped spinning and, pulling in her tentacles, drifted straight down toward the seafloor.
When I arrived this morning, I found your boss Wog so drunk on berry that he could hardly swim. That sea curl has been relieved of his duty. Permanently.
Several Cephians gasped. Zuva looked pleased and began to slide among the group, males shrinking at her approach.
Oh my cracking,
Blanche whispered to Boyd.
Poor Wog. Do you think he'll be sent to the forges down in the trenches? That pressure kills a Cephian in days. Don't be so dry, Blanche,
Boyd said softly.
Boss, He's already dead.
Do you have something to share with us, Scout? Asked Zuva from right behind them. Blanche squeaked and discharged a small amount of ink as he slunk into a bow. Boyd turned and looked up at the matron, his skin as deep a green as always.
Well, ma'am, said Boyd, I was just clarifying for my young neighbor here the meaning in your illustrious words, explaining that you yourself have executed our dear boss Wog.
Boyd's words were met with yet more gasps, and more than a few inky discharges. Zuva's eyes squinted. What's your name?
It's Boyd.
And where are you from, Boyd?
Nowhere, ma'am.
Oh, come on now. Everyone is from somewhere.
I only meant nowhere of significance. I was raised in a little hamlet down on the Pelagic Plains to the south.
The Pelagic Plains? Farmers then. And tell me, what did your people farm, Boyd?
Shrimp, ma'am.
Shrimp? She moved closer, so close that her tentacles brushed slickly against Boyd's. Well then, old shrimp farmer, perhaps you don't recognize the unique honor the queens are bestowing upon you all. In helping me today, you will be part of defeating a great evil in the world.
Uh-huh. You mean by, what was your phrasing? Unleashing the sacred judgment of our spears. Not sure I'd word it like that personally.
The males around them shrunk back, shocked by the brashness of Boyd's words. And what would an elderly shrimp farmer know of war?
Well, this one knows quite a lot, seeing as I fought in the Battle of the Brackish and the last swim of the Shark Hearts.
Now the same males that had backed away crept forward, awe in their eyes. Did you really, Boyd?
I didn't know that. You don't look that old.
Boyd chuckled.
Gee, thanks, fellas.
Zuva's eyes flashed in irritation.
Ill shit! This wrinkled old scout never fought in the Great Conquest.
I wish that were true,
Boyd muttered. Then he cleared his throat.
So, you killed Wog today. Are you gonna give his body to his sons? They should be allowed to perform the rites of the severing.
Zuva's squint intensified.
Oh, I'll do better than that. Sila, Vishma, show these lowly tenants of yours what becomes of those who speak back to a servant of Seamount.
From the gates of the village, the two local overseers swam out into the basin, and the males parted at their approach. Though long and yellow in color, these females had none of the grace and terrifying beauty of quarter matron Zuva. Their skin was wrinkly and splotchy, stretched from their time as birthers, and their eyes were sunken from decades of abusing Barry. Ordinarily, Sila and Vishma cracked wryly and whipped their tentacles at any males who came too close. But today, in the presence of the Imperial Zuva, the landladies were silent as they moved through the crowd.
Kraken have mercy!
Someone cursed. As they saw what the females carried, the males slunk flat against the sand, their colors shifting to muddy brown in grief. Boyd made himself look. Sila held the severed tentacles of Boss Wog, tangled and knotted in a loose green pile, and leaking a mist of blue blood in her wake. Vishma held Wog's head, which had been split down the middle in the front, exposing the coils of brains and guts and hearts within.
Well, shrimp farmer, what do you think? Will his sons be pleased that I already began the ritual for them?
Boyd looked into the empty gaze and gaping beak of the dead boss. He had never liked Wog much, but the sight of his mutilated corpse filled Boyd with anger, and despite his best efforts, he felt his skin ripple and blush, going dark with fury.
I think you made your point, ma'am,
he said, turning from the grisly sight to glare up into her eyes.
And I foresee that this new war of yours will be like all the others. It'll mean lots of riches for females, lots of bloodshed for males, and in the end, no change for the wider seas. 'Cause nothing ever changes. Nothing ever will.
He stared at her. She stared back. For a moment, Boyd thought the matron might strike him. Her tentacles flexed and their suckers opened menacingly. But the moment passed. She pushed off the sand and glided swiftly from the basin, calling behind her as she swam.
Gear up, all of you. Grab your spears and meet back here in 1 hour. We are going to the surface, and you will find what we need. Or else Boss Wob there will not be the only corpse in this wretched place.
When she was gone, the males deflated, sighing hot water through gills, their skin going glassy smooth again.
Holy deep,
Whined Blanche.
I've never been to a meeting like that. Indeed not,
Said Boyd.
Cold damn, Boyd, son of Boyd, warrior of the great conquest? Who would have guessed that?
Called out Rook, a purple male who spoke with a heavy Lander's accent.
And I's never seen someone face down a female like yous did. Yous must have chitin of iron under your skin, eh, Boyd?
The others began to gather around Boyd, staring at the old fella with new awe and admiration.
Not sure squabbling with females is a healthy trait.
Boyd admitted to the group.
Only ever gets me into trouble. Ha! You's one of a kind. But yous do gotta be extra careful with that one.
Rook told him, and waving a tentacle for the others to come closer. He lowered his voice.
I's a cable layer before I's came here. We's would listen in to the cable transmissions coming from Seamount to check the signal. So I's heard lots of Imperial news, and I's know what quarter Matron Zuva really is.
He swam up between Boyd and Blanche.
Zuva is part of the Nautilix lineage. She's a royal, a cousin to the 8 queens.
Impossible,
Gasped Blanche, inking himself again. Boyd considered this.
Well, this day keeps getting more and more peculiar.
what do you think it means?
Asked one of the other males. Boyd looked around him, at all the frightened faces, so desperate for answers.
I ain't too sure, but I'll tell you this.
He pushed off the seafloor and started swimming back into town.
If we're scouting with a true royal cousin, then whatever we're looking for out there on the dries today, it sure as deep ain't oil.
Back in his room, Boyd packed his geo-sounder into a knapsack, then got on his surface gear. Slinging on the sack, he attached a pair of metal hinges to the bag and then to a band of seaweed leather, which he tied around his crested head. Finally, he pulled a pair of thick, brass goggles over his eyes.
Come, Yips. Your turn, girl.
The Thorix swam over, and Boyd strapped her water recycler around her torso and over her gills.
All good and dandy. Then let's get this over with.
Swimming to where his spear was stabbed into the floor, Boyd snaked 2 tentacles around its iron shaft and tugged it free. The spear was old now, like Boyd, but still strong. Again, like Boyd. Shutting the curtain door behind them, Cephian and Thorix swam from the room, side by side. Once in the basin, they joined the rest of the scouts, all geared up and speared up and ready for scouting. Matron Zuva, now wearing gleaming golden surface gear of her own, hovered above their heads.
Move out!
She commanded, and shooting herself forward in a blaze of red tentacles, she led the scouts northward. The convoy swam just beneath the ocean's surface, cruising in ordered ranks, warmed by the sun above the waves. Boyd placed himself at the edge of the group so that Yipsy had plenty of room to frolic as she pleased. Soon, the town was far behind them. They glided over a field of wriggling anemones. This was a world of motion, with seasons, with energy. The world of Boyd's childhood had been much different. Those days, down in the cold and the dark, he had only known flat plains of silt, fenced into plots with wire nets, and patrolled by Cephian farmers with tritons and sharkbite armor. Boyd was 1,000 knots from those plains now, 1,000 memories from those times, yet still they came to mind whenever he traversed these lively coastal waters. They moved into the shadow of a dense kelpland, and following Zuva, entered a path cut through the seaweed forest. The sun had disappeared behind clouds now, and left the waters dim and green. That was good. Nothing worse than scouting on a bright day, Boyd always said. An hour later, the pale foot of a beach loomed ahead of them. Yipsy joined Boyd and the rest of the group as they landed silently on the sand and slunk upward toward the air of the dry and dangerous world beyond the sea. Boyd's head broke the surface of the water. His pupils adjusted in the soft gray light. All around him, cephian bodies pulled themselves along in the surf, up the gentle incline of sand, their bodies held partially upright by their surface gear. A cephian could survive out here without the gear, at least for a while, but it wouldn't be easy. Boyd adjusted his goggles, double-checked Yipsy's recycler, then slid out onto the coarse, dry sand to join the gathering scouts on the beach. Many of the younger males were attaching parasols to their headgear or applying ink to their skin. Boyd never bothered with such precautions. He had long since grown accustomed to filtering oxygen from the air, to keeping check on his pruning skin, and to counting down the hours before he could slip back into the ocean.
Ink and blast!
Someone cursed, in a very strange-sounding voice. At first, Boyd didn't recognize the speaker. Then he realized why. It was Matron Zuva, and Boyd had never heard the voice of a female in the open air. He looked over at her. She was still back in the foamy surf, half in and half out of the water. The hinges of her gear had gotten crossed, forcing her head forward at an angle. Boyd sighed, then slid back to her.
Here, why don't I lend you a tentacle? As well you should,
She grunted, turning to look at him.
Oh, it's you, the shrimp farmer. Yup,
He answered, grabbing hold of the hinges of her gear and shoving them back into place.
there you go, ma'am. So, ever been out of water before?
She straightened up, sliding forward up the beach.
Obviously. Seamount has towers that reach high above the surface.
Boyd clicked his beak and moved up beside her.
Begging your pardon, ma'am, but I ain't talking about misted terraces or perfumed air paths. This here is true dry land, a country of rock, root, and sunburn. It takes some getting used to, and I'd hate for something to happen to you out here. Ha, I bet you would. I ain't joking. Something happens to a female with us today, to a royal no less, we'll all be on the front lines by sundown, fighting spear to spear with dark wave until there's so much blood in the water that you can't tell who it is you're stabbing. I ain't about to let that happen. Period.
She stared down at him through her gold-rimmed goggles.
You're very strange, you know?
Boyd wasn't sure how to respond to that, though he was saved from having to by Yipsy, who chose that moment to come bounding over the beach toward them, the water in her recycler sloshing, her paws kicking up wet sand. Zuva flinched, her skin rippling.
What is this creature doing here? Yipsy? She always comes with me.
Boyd scratched the Tharix's snout.
Don't you worry. Tharixes might not be as amphibious as us, but Yipsy here has learned to keep her nostrils shut and to breathe with the regulator. It isn't regulation. I don't approve. Send her away.
Rook glided over to join them, bowing as he said,
Pardon me's, matron, ma'am, but Yipsy here is dear to all ours hearts. She's never causes any trouble, I assure yous. Well, see that she doesn't.
snapped the matron, casting the Tharix a final look of disgust, then sliding off. Boyd thanked Rook, then turned to survey the landscape around them. They had landed on the southern beach of Arganox Major. He hadn't been here in years, not since that cable station was built. If it wasn't for the presence of Matron Zuva, the male scouts never would have been allowed this close to the secretive technology in that structure. He looked now at the Imperial facility, which stood 100 yards down the beach on a grassy hill. It was a solid and windowless edifice of mud brick, heavy and ugly, and unlike any of the graceful structures Cephians built on the seafloor. The station was topped with a spindly tower supporting a web of cables, thin, black, twisted wires. Some of the cables ran down into the sea. others out over the land. Boyd had never worked as a cable layer himself. Those were hard jobs to come by. Nor did he understand how the cables worked. It was something about energy, about little bits of harnessed lightning that could be channeled through the wires to receivers in distant places, transporting messages, information, and even the voice of a female. The technology was all quite fantastical to old Boyd.
Cracking damn, what an eyesore.
He took his gaze off the ugly cable station and looked up at the sky instead. A break in the clouds to the west showed brilliant blue, and that blue was slashed in half by the planet's rings. Boyd drank in the sight. He had always adored the rings of Garsek. It was even worth facing a bit of sunlight to glimpse that glittering streak of diamond bright space dust, eternally revolving around the planet in bands of silver, bronze, and royal blue.
That can't be right!
Somebody shouted, shaking Boyd from his musings. Boyd turned and approached the source of the commotion. Most of the males had gathered around Zuva, who had a map unfolded on the sand.
It is right.
Zuva assured the assembly.
We will move north through this quadrant, across those hills, and toward that river. But ma'am,
spluttered a scout.
that would take us right alongside those cables. We're not authorized to get that close to cables. We'll get in trouble. You will do what I say. Now come. We will set up the first survey on that ridge.
She folded the map and slid from the beach. The males fell in line behind her, silent and obedient. Boyd tapped the butt of his spear against a rock and called to Yipsy. She bounded over to join him. The convoy oozed up the hillside, grabbing at rocks and tree roots with their slippery tentacles. They were soon among green trees with thorny bark, and golden ferns grew between cracks in the rocky ground. Mud skippers basking on stones wriggled into the mud at the cephian's approach. The scouts halted at the top of the ridge. Fog was now wafting in from the east. The moisture felt cool on Boyd's skin, full of the smell of rain. Delicious. Under Zuva's direction, they set up to take their first reading. The males gathered in trios and spread out along the ridge, unpacking and assembling the scouting equipment. Boyd and the scouts with him, two blues called Model and Stip, all stabbed their spears into the ground at an angle, leaning the spears and tying them together. Next, Model held up a heavy geosounder device, and Stip attached it to the teepee of spears on a chain. The geosounder hung there, in the humid air, its magnetic arms extended. The scouts sighed and relaxed on the ground, waiting, watching as the instrument slowly spun from side to side.
Well?
Asked Zuva, her voice echoing through the mist.
Does anyone see any sign of a subterranean anomaly?
No one answered. The scouts all knew it would take at least a quarter of an hour to get any trustworthy results from the devices. But no one wanted to be the one to tell this to the quarter-matron purveyor. Boyd squinted at their geosounder and exhaled through his gills. This was a waste of time. They could wait all day, but the geosounders wouldn't work out here. Not anymore, because of the cables. He had a hunch that something about the energy running through that network messed with the magnetic readings of the devices. And Boyd's hunches were generally right.
I bet she knows that.
He muttered to himself.
So then, I wonder if that's why we're really here. Maybe something's wrong with these cables, and we gotta find the trouble.
It began to rain. Boyd laid back, welcoming the water on his skin, and watched Yipsy splashing happily in puddles. 20 minutes later, with no signs detected, the group repacked their gear and moved onward. Through the rain, over mud and rock and weeds, northward into the deepening fog. They stopped 3 more times that morning to take additional readings. After packing up for the 4th time, the scouts were ready to quit for the day, but Zuva would hear none of it.
I will allow a half-hour break to rest and lunch, but afterward, we must take at least 2 more readings. And, as an added incentive to you worthless berry guzzlers, whoever finds the first sign, they will be permitted 1 visit to the birthing lakes of Nagaden to donate their seed.
This proclamation was answered with astonished gaps and whoops of excitement.
Did you hear that?
Someone exclaimed,
Who'd have thought that they would bless any of us with fatherhood?
but Boyd just grumbled and shook his head. His seed had no doubt dried up a decade ago, and he had no interest in making little Boyds. Yipsy was more than enough family for him. Finding a large, mossy tree root twisted like a bench, Boyd flopped himself onto it. The Tharix joined him, laying on her side with her head resting across his tentacles. Model and Stip settled nearby. They had hunted a few mudskippers along the morning's journey, and as Stip now descaled and gutted the landfish, Model uncorked 2 chem bottles from his pack and poured their contents onto a flat stone. As soon as the chemicals mixed, they began to spark and smoke and glow orange. This chemical reaction, which worked both in and out of the water, produced intense heat and light. Model set a pan filled with herbed seawater over the blaze, and in a few minutes, they were divvying up boiled fish among themselves and Yipsy. All too soon, the break was over, and Zuva barked at them to get up and moving. The rain had slowed to a lazy drizzle, but the fog was thicker than ever. They moved in silence. No one dared raise their voice in an old battle ballad or a crude folk song, not with a female present.
We're passing into the next quadrant,
called Zuva, inking out a square on her map.
Keep moving. Another 2 knots north.
Their path took them downhill, snaking among trickling creeks. Blanche came alongside Boyd and, adjusting his goggles, said,
So what do you think this is really about?
Boyd didn't answer right away, and when he did, he kept his voice low.
The Empire is at war,
said Boyd.
and the Imperial strategy must rely on this here cable network. But I think something's gone wrong with it. Like what? Don't know. Maybe the wires have gone dead. Or maybe somebody's spying on the messages they send through them.
Blanche's skin went pale and pimply.
Oh, Kraken, do you think there are darkwave spies here? Nah, more likely sabotage. Maybe internal strife among the 8 queens. Or it could just be some sort of natural interference. I ain't too worried. I'll be glad to get home, though. This place, it don't feel right. Feels all wrong. Haunted like.
They moved in silence through the fog for another minute. Then Blanche sighed.
You know, I might sign up for the war. Could be exciting. Good pay, too.
Boyd grumbled in his throat.
Exciting? Sure. If you like getting your hearts skewered on a spear shaft, and pay don't mean nothing after that's happened to you. Ah, come on, Boyd. It can't be that bad. You know the grand old songs of the battles of... Watch out!
Boyd shouted, grabbing Blanche and yanking him backward.
What the? Whoa!
Boyd straightening up, panting.
Stay back, Yipsy. Careful, everyone. We got us a deadly little gorge over here.
Boyd stared down at the fissure in the rocky ground. He had noticed it only a second before Blanche would have fallen right into it. The crack wasn't far across, but its muddy edges blended into the surroundings like camouflage.
What's the problem?
Asked Zuva, sliding from the fog to investigate. Boyd pointed down the crack.
Can't even see the bottom, ma'am. Would make for a nasty fall.
She squinted down the fissure.
Interesting. We will set up here. Spread out, all of you, and watch where you're sliding. I'd hate to have to fill out another death report today. I don't have the time for it.
The males dispersed once more, helping one another over several more dangerous cracks in the ground. Boyd heard, through the clutter of assembling equipment, Model's voice calling to him.
Boyd, we're setting up over here. Come take a look at this.
Boyd followed the voice, making sure Yipsy was safe at his side, and approached a rocky hill with a flattened top. He climbed the slope, pulling himself up by mossy rocks. At the top, he found Model and Stip staring down at something. They were perched on the edge of a circular hole. It was only about 1 meter in diameter, but they couldn't see the bottom. The muddy walls corkscrewed down into total darkness.
Damn,
said Boyd.
like a tunnel to the heart of Garsek.
What's down there, do you think?
mused Stip.
No idea.
Said Boyd.
Fire, water, or monsters covered in eyeballs. Who knows?
They set up the geosounder on their spears beside the hole, sat down in the mud, and waited. The rain stopped entirely, but the fog remained, sifting the sunlight to a pale gray shimmer around them. Boyd was exhausted. He always felt so heavy out of water. As he lay in the mud, his gaze lost focus, and the world melted into a sheet of pearl before him. Then something small and fuzzy flitted into his vision, moving in loops. Boyd's pupils adjusted. He sat up.
What the?
It wasn't just a leaf on the wind. It was a creature. Wow! Delicate and weightless, and unlike any Boyd had ever seen. It was tiny, no bigger than a shrimp, with paper-thin halves the colors of a sunset that flapped open and close. And the creature, it was swimming in the air.
Well, look at you,
whispered Boyd, watching the mysterious critter.
Ain't you a sight to behold? Gypsy likes it too, whatever it is,
chuckled Model, nodding at where the thorax spun and jumped, trying to catch the tiny creature in her mouth.
Oh, leave it be, girl,
called Boyd. Gypsy leaped and bit at the air.
Hey, get back now,
Boyd urged, straightening up.
Not so close to the hole, Gypsy. Gypsy!
The creature moved straight over the hole. Gypsy bent her 6 legs and jumped, soaring over the hole. Boyd gasped, flexing himself into motion. He saw her front paws strike the far edge of the gap and slip on the wet moss there. Her back paws kicked out, but met only slick air, and with a painful yelp, she fell.
No!
Boyd flung himself forward, knocking over the 3 spears and sending his spear tumbling into the hole. He stretched out a tentacle and managed to grab the end of Gypsy's tail. Then he was pulled down after her, tumbling into the darkness. Cephian and thorax fell like stones. They struck the rocky wall and bounced apart. Boyd reached out, felt his tentacle scraping over hard stone, and heard himself screaming. All was blackness, all was spinning. He tasted bile in his beak. He heard a yelp. He saw a star. He saw nothing.
Another nightmare. Can you believe it, Gypsy? Another dark vision in the deep of deeps. It's too much. Too much for old Boyd. Crack and save me. It's too much.
Boyd awoke, gasping for water, but his gills sucked in only dust. He tried to move, but his body was pinned down, crushed, flattened. His tentacles were buried under stone. No, wait, not stone. A layer of dried mud. He widened his pupils. No light. Not even the fathomless, empty blue of the pelagic plains, where a green cephian's keen eyes might pick up the bioluminescence of a distant fish or the glow of a chemical lantern in a nearby village.
Gypsy!
Boyd screamed.
Where are you, girl?
He heard movement, a whimper.
Yips, I'm coming. Hold on, girl.
Boyd squeezed his beak shut, tensed, and hurled himself off the ground. Mud cracked and shattered. He flipped over, his aching tentacles slapping cold rock, and screamed. Something was burrowed into the back of his head. He lifted a shaking tentacle to feel it. His surface gear must have broken in the fall. His goggles were gone, and one of the metal hinges had snapped and lodged its tip into his flesh.
Kraken!
He tightened his tentacle on the blood-soaked metal and pulled. His head jerked with the motion, but the hinge didn't budge.
Ah, shit! Come on, Boyd.
He reached a second tentacle up to the broken hinge. He squeezed and yanked. The hinge pulled free with a dribble of cold blood.
Ah!
Pain branched through the back of his eyes, through his hearts, and through his guts. Boyd took a slow breath, trying to focus his mind. He had to mentally catalog his injuries and see how bad it was. His gills burned with thirst, and every muscle in his body felt almost too weak and dried out to move. And besides the bleeding hole in the back of his head, there was the matter of the rigid chitin plate beneath his skin, which protected the vital organs within his head and was definitely injured.
Ah, damn it!
Shifting gingerly from side to side, he thought he could feel the place where the plate had cracked in two down the middle.
Well, that ain't good.
Something yapped softly, echoing through the darkness. Poyd awoke a second time, this time from hopelessness into urgency. He sat up, reaching out in the dark.
Gypsy, where are ya? Let me hear ya.
Another whimper.
I need light. Kraken, damn it.
His knapsack was still on, tangled in two tentacles. He pulled it off, then opened the tattered bag. Reaching inside, he groped at his gear until he found his vials of cooking chemicals.
Yes.
He yanked the vials out and opened. The two liquids burst into the air and mixed before they hit the ground. A wave of heat rushed over Poyd, and dazzling orange light splashed across stone. By the light of the chem puddle, Poyd saw he was in a cave tunnel at the base of a diagonal shaft.
That mossy passage there. That must be at the bottom of the hole we fell into, sliding down here at a curve. Lucky. But how long ago was that? A minute? An hour? A whole day for all I know.
He sighed and turned to peer into the darkness beyond the reach of the chemical glow.
Gypsy?
No answer. Steadying himself, Poyd started forward down the tunnel, moaning with each tiny, painful movement. He came upon something on the cave floor, its shadow flickering in the yellow light.
Gypsy!
The thorax lay on her side, eyes closed. The water recycler on her back was mostly intact, thank Kraken. Some of the water had leaked out, but he could hear her gills breathing in the liquid that remained.
You're alive!
He took her head gently in his tentacles and turned her to face his. Yipsy's small eyes fluttered open, and she saw Poyd, then closed them again.
Now, none of that, girl. We just need to get you into water. You're drying out down here, and I need water. Yips, I'm so dizzy. And I'm losing blood.
He turned back toward the shaft.
Help us. Hello? Anyone?
His voice was too weak, and the call died without barely an echo.
Alrighty then. Well, we're survivors, you and me. We just gotta find water, then find a way out. Get back to the sea, that's all. First, water.
He patted Yipsy, then made his way back to his knapsack, and tearing off one of its seaweed leather straps, he wrapped it around a tentacle tip and carefully moistened it in the shimmering chemical pool. Holding the glowing tentacle over his head like a torch, he moved down the tunnel, past Yipsy. Soon, Poyd came upon something metal. It was his old and trusty spear, now bent in the middle. Poyd pushed it aside and moved on. He came to another wall.
Don't be the end of the passage. Give me something.
He turned to either side, examining the rock walls. There was a crack to his right, just wide enough for a cephian to move through. Taking a deep breath of the musty air, he shifted his body and squeezed inside, wincing as his broken chitin plate bent to fit. After wriggling for a dozen meters, the passage opened up, and Poyd had space to spread out his sore tentacles and ease the agony in his head. Sighing, he looked around, and as his eyes adjusted, clicked his beak.
Well, looky here.
Poyd had entered a great cavern, bigger than his light could fully illuminate. Squinting through the dimness, he saw a forest of stalagmites, like a petrified kelpland. Black cubes of crystal grew on the natural columns like geometric barnacles, and he could hear, distinct as the voice of a friend, droplets of water. Drip, drip, drip. He turned to his right. He was a few meters from the edge of an underground lake. Ripples washed its black mirror surface, pinging with each drip from the ceiling above. Poyd didn't wait. He hurried to the lake and plunged. He breathed deeply. The water was tepid, stale, and sour. It was not fresh water as Poyd knew it. He could taste sodium and calcium and sulfates, but he guessed a cephian could survive in this water, at least for a few hours. He stretched out his tentacles and exhaled hot air bubbles from his gills. The pain in his head lessened in the buoyancy. He might have fallen asleep, floating there, but one of his tentacles bumped against something in the water, and he flinched. He looked around, expecting to find a sea snake, but no, it was a cable.
Now, what's that doing down here?
He wondered, regarding the taut wire, which stretched at an angle from the cavern ceiling above to the dark water below.
Some great coil of the cable must have fallen down one of them cracks in the surface and rolled all the way down here to this here lake. Fancy that.
Even as he stared at it, the chem glow on his tentacle tip gave a final yellow flicker and extinguished its light. Boyd was left in blackness. He reached out to grab the cable and to use it as a guide to the surface, gripping it in two tentacles. The cable shuddered. The lake reverberated with a noise like thunder, and its watery depths glared suddenly with violet light.
What the deep?
Boyd let go and swam madly upward, the eerie light blazing below. Bursting through the surface of the lake, he pulled himself back onto the cavern floor and lay panting. The cable continued to vibrate, like a harp string, filling the cavern with a low drone. Shaking, Boyd slowly moved to the water's edge and peered down. Purple light flashed in those depths like underwater lightning.
Well, whatever that is, it can wait. I gotta help Yipsy.
Fanning out 3 tentacles and stretching the rubbery skin between them, he lowered himself and filled the webbed skin with water. He then pulled himself up and slid carefully backward toward the tunnel.
There you go, girl,
Boyd whispered, adding most of the gathered lake water to Yipsy's recycler and spreading the rest around her eyes and snout.
It ain't too briny, I'm afraid, but it should keep you alive.
He gave Yipsy a hard scratch on the head. She stirred.
Good girl. I'll get some more.
After 2 more trips to the lake, Yipsy was finally able to sit up.
That's it. You're all right. You rest here in the chem light. I'll be back. There's something I gotta check out.
He lifted his bent spear from the ground and returned to the lake's edge, hesitating only a moment before slipping into the ominously flickering water. Black. Violet. Black. Violet. Boyd descended, his eyes peeling for the source of the light, his spear held out before him as he swam. The lake was much deeper than he had guessed, a cylindrical chamber that seemed to go down forever. After 50 meters, he halted, floating in place. The cable stretched down to a flat shelf of stone there, like a jagged step sticking out from the wall, and sitting on the edge of that rocky shelf was the object emitting the light. It was some sort of elongated box, about 2 meters long, 1 meter wide, and 1 meter tall. The box was smooth and metallic, and it had no markings on it, no hinges, no keyholes. Every few seconds, the whole of its surface would glow. It didn't look like any cephian creation he had ever seen. Boyd came closer. The cable and box were connected, he saw, fused and burned together. That didn't look intentional. The end of the cable must have come to lay across the side of the box, where a bulbous growth like charred metal bubbles enveloped it.
What the deep happened here?
He stretched out a tentacle, and with a single sucker on its tip, he gently touched the object. The box went dark. And then, a symphony of colors, explosions of light. A splendiferous rainbow of crisscrossed beams shot from the surface on the box out upon the rocky walls, illuminating patches of fuzzy crystals and swollen growths of opalescent stone. Boyd recoiled, almost dropping his spear, and inked himself in his panic. The light mixed with the ink around him into a whirlpool of pitch, fire, and ultramarine. Then the rays of light dimmed and began to gather together. The box projected a strange shape onto the nearest wall. Boyd glided sideways out of the ink cloud and stared at it. The projected image looked like... was it some kind of creature?
What are you supposed to be then?
At 2 meters tall, the luminous figure was the size of a cephian female, but nothing about it was cephian. At its top was an ovoid head on a short neck above a curvy torso. 2 limbs hung at its sides, bent in the middle and ending in pointy paws. 2 more limbs extended down and bent at the bottom. A sheet of stringy whiskers grew on its head, except for on its face. The projected creature didn't appear to have any gills, and it wore a silky garment around its middle. Its head tilted back to reveal an ugly, simplistic face without suckers, frills, or beak. It had a thin mouth, a high, narrow snout, and 2 oval eyes. The eyes swiveled as if looking around in the subterranean lake and came to focus on Boyd. Then its mouth curved upward at the corners, showing small, white, square teeth. A voice sounded, not from the projected figure itself, but from a vibration of the box, in sync with the motions of the lips on the rocky wall.
Why, hello,
crooned the mysterious voice.
You must be a cephian, female or male?
Boyd said nothing. His skin rippled in shock. He was too completely amazed to even think of what to say. This thing, this creature of light, was looking at him, seeing him, and speaking to him in his own language, with a female voice and a sea mountain accent. The figure's eyes blinked and glanced around.
This place, it was not underwater when I went to sleep. Curious. And you? Are you a cable layer, little cephian?
Boyd muttered, his heart's twittering madly.
Me? Is that why you came down here? Because of this broken cable, which so fortuitously did come to rest against my metal form, and leaking its electrons, did shock me back to waking?
I was just trying to save my friend, Yipsy. She jumped after she fell down a hole, see? Jumping after this little papery critter that swam through the air.
Oh, I am intrigued. Did the instigating critter perhaps look something like this?
And to Boyd's astonishment, the figure held out one limb, and a new ray of light from the box cast a little image onto the stone, in the exact form of the one back on the surface.
Yeah, that's it.
How very poetic. All this, and all that is to come, set in motion by the beat of a butterfly's wings. Fate has indeed smiled on us this day.
Boyd swallowed.
So, are you like some kind of creature then?
The curve of the figure's lips grew more pronounced.
What I am is complicated. This body you see in the projection is that of a female of the species that created me. But it is merely a visual aid for your sake. The true me is, in fact, an intricate neural network programmed within an electrochemical machine, an artificial mind housed in biomimetic circuitry.
So, you live in that there box?
I am the box.
Boyd looked at the object again, and the cable burned into its side.
You've been intercepting the female's signals, haven't you? Through the cable. That's how you know Cephian language. How long have you been listening in, gathering information?
Oh, how very astute you are. You are a male, correct? Curious. It is clear to me that the females don't give your sex enough credit. As for your question, I'm uncertain of the timeline. The electricity from this cable's accidental touch awoke me, but it was some moments before all of my systems were fully aware and rebooted. My internal clock started tracking time 1 year ago.
A whole year, eh? Listening, learning all that passed through the network, and messing with the signal too, I bet. That's why Seamount is worried. That's why she had us searching the dries. I'll be damned.
The figure cocked its head.
I am no darkwave spy, if that's what they're worried about.
Then what are you?
Something old, something powerful.
You got a name?
Oh, I was called by many names. By those who manufactured me, by those who wielded me against their enemies, by those I was used upon, the victims of my potent powers.
Right. Well, I'm just Boyd.
Boyd? Boyd, son of Boyd, son of Boyd. Is that not the naming convention of the Cephian male?
It is.
In that case, why not call me after my own parent kind, after those who created me, and who, once upon a time, evolved and lived upon this very planet? You may call me human.
Boyd felt a chill crawl across his flesh, and his skin darkened.
Alrighty then. So tell me, human, what exactly are you doing down here in this watery cave?
One might say, I have been waiting for my champion. And now, here you are.
The projection grew brighter, and the figure stretched out its limbs to either side as it declared, in a clear and echoing voice,
My champion, Boyd, son of Boyd, proud son of Garsek, which was once called Earth. Boyd, blessed among all the sentient descendants of the humble octopus. He who now holds the fate of the worlds in his puckered grasp.
Up you get, girl. Lean on me. That's right, Yipsy. There's someone, or something, damned if I know what it is, that's gonna have a look at you. Not sure we can trust it, but I don't think we got any other choice.
Boyd set his spear on the cave floor, then wrapped half his tentacles around his pet thorax and began to gently pull her. It took him a quarter of an hour to move her from the cave tunnel to the edge of the subterranean lake. Boyd slid into the cool water first, then carefully pulled the injured thorax in after him. Taking her by the paw, he led her down to the strange box on the ledge and the projection of human glowing on the rock wall.
This is Yipsy,
Boyd panted.
the thorax I was telling you about. You got powers, right? Can you help her, human? She's hurt.
Hello, you.
Human said to Yipsy.
I don't know this species. The cataclysm must have led to surprising new branches of evolution. As for helping her, my powers are many, Boydson, but they serve a specific purpose, and unlocking them involves a very specific arrangement.
So you can't help her?
I can at least inspect her injuries. One moment.
The figure faded from the wall and the box went dark, leaving them in blackness. Then a spreading ray of light shot out at the back of the box, aimed at Yipsy and Boyd. A line of gray-green illumination passed over their bodies, and Boyd was astonished to find he could see beneath his own skin into layers of wrinkled tissue and pumping vessels as the light passed over him.
How are you doing this?
Boyd began to ask, but the intrusive beam had already finished its mysterious work and gone out. Then, human reappeared.
My scan is complete. Apart from 2 fractured ribs, there is only some internal bruising,
said human.
Your pet should recover.
Boyd wrapped Yipsy in his tentacles and leaned to rest his head on hers.
Hear that, girl? Thank Kraken.
But you yourself were grievously hurt, Boyd. That must be addressed.
Boyd released Yipsy from the embrace. She began to circle in place, cautiously moving her 6 limbs in the water. He felt at the back of his own head with one tentacle tip.
Yeah, that fall battered me up a bit.
Apply pressure to the lower left side of your head,
Human instructed.
and twist hard to your right.
What? Why?
The maneuver should realign the broken halves of your chitin plate. I have just studied your internal anatomy, remember?
Boyd cautiously brought more tentacles up against that spot. Even the gentle pressure of his suckers caused him a jolt of pain.
Go on, push and twist.
He hesitated, then gritted his beak. Shoving his tentacles against his skin and pushing his head back, he twisted as hard and fast as he could. There was a crack, a shock of pain, a flash in his mind. He opened his beak to scream, then shut it again.
Well, what do you know?
He said, feeling at his head.
I still ache, but most of the sharp pain is gone.
You see, I can be trusted.
Right. Well, thank you.
Said Boyd, clearing his throat.
So, any chance you can help us find a way out of here?
The curve returned to Human's mouth.
Perhaps, but let's not be too hasty. I would like to know you better, and I'm certain there are other ways I might aid you, Boyd, beyond a mere path to the surface.
Boyd watched Yipsy drifting lazily around the circular cave.
I'd prefer to get her back to sea as soon as possible. No offense.
Then, do you not wish to get to know me? Surely you don't encounter something like me every day. Are you not curious?
Boyd clicked his beak.
Sure I am. But you don't get to my age by giving in to curiosity, when caution is an option.
I see. But please understand, you are the first entity I have spoken to in a very long time. I would hate for us to part so soon.
He looked back at the figure.
Just how long have you been asleep down here?
Human's eyes swiveled to survey the space around them.
I cannot be certain. My internal clock was not powered, remember? But looking at the growth of the stones around us, I would say 100 million years, give or take.
100 million years?
Gasped Boyd.
Is the universe so old as that?
Human laughed.
Oh, yes. The cosmos is far older, far bigger, and far more wondrous than you know. But the females of your race, they know it well. Their technology might still be rather rudimentary, but their naturalists have developed an impressive understanding of science, though they keep it hidden from males like you. There is so very much they hide from you and your brotherkin. It is unjust, Boyd, how they treat you, how desperate you must be for answers. I could give them to you, you know.
Well, like I said, all I want to know is how to get out of this here cave.
Human crossed its upper limbs.
You are stubborn, aren't you? And here I was believing that male cephians always shrink in fear and submission at the sound of a female's voice.
Boyd squinted at her.
Is that why you're speaking to me the way you are? You could probably sound and look like anything you wanted, I imagine.
Yes. What would you prefer?
Should I look and sound like a male?
Or maybe like a gargantuan kraken, shaped like an 8-pointed star covered in eyes. That might be a bit much,
Joked Boyd.
And the voice don't matter much to me. Just speak plainly.
Very well.
The projection began to move around the cave wall, its lower limbs in alternating motion as if walking.
To say it plainly, on your own, you and your pet have little chance of making it back to the sea. You will almost certainly die within this labyrinth of caverns in the attempt, and I will be left alone, again, unless...
Unless what?
Unless we work together.
Together, eh?
Boyd didn't like the sound of that.
And what do me and Yips possibly have that could be of use to something like you?
More than you might guess, Boyd, for you do not yet know my story.
I think I get the gist of it, actually. You were made by a type of creature that used to live down in these caves, way back yonder. And they were smart, like cephians, maybe smarter. And you're one of their machines. Is that it?
Not quite. And I am more than a mere machine. I am the memory of that once mighty people. I am the best of humanity, preserved. And I have the potential to turn their might and genius over to you.
Pod exhaled.
Goody.
But my creators did not inhabit the dismal basement of this planet.
Human's eyes rolled to look, and it raised its upper limbs.
They walked in the brightness of day, on the surface of every land, and then in the skies, and then on the moon entire, which they turned into a paradise, into a second Earth.
Okay, now you're losing me,
Boyd admitted.
I think some of them words ain't translating.
Which words? Earth? That's what humans called Garsek. And moon? It is a Cephian word, actually. The females have observed and recorded many of the smaller celestial bodies which orbit other worlds in the solar system.
Hang on. There are other worlds? Like Garsek?
Human stopped pacing and shook its head back and forth, chuckling.
Oh, Boyd, you poor ignorant soul. Here, let me reveal to you that majesty of the cosmos that your cruel mistress rulers keep to themselves.
And with a flash, the projection of human changed, stretching and splitting and growing until rays of light shot from the box and painted the stony walls with a million colors. Yipsy yelped in shock and swam to hide under Boyd's tentacles. He patted her head as he revolved in the water, staring at the luminous miracle all around him.
Whoa, what is this?
The universe,
Human's voice rang out.
the infinite ocean of stars and worlds. And this star here, the sun, and here, our planet, which you call Garsek.
The projection of Garsek, a sphere of marbled blue, green, beige, and white, grew larger, rotating slowly in the projection.
So that's what the world looks like from beyond the rings. Incredible.
Would you like it before it had rings? Back when it had a moon?
Yeah.
The planet blurred as it reversed its spin, the stars whooshing by behind it, and Garsek's rings, which Boyd had always loved so much, started to change, to blur, to swirl into a loose cloud of sparkling specks. And then, in a rush, they came crashing together to form a new world, a smaller sphere of silver and blue. Many hundreds of bright circles were spread across its surface, stitched together by glowing lines.
That was the moon of Earth, in its age of the 1,000 cities, after humans had tamed its frozen surface.
But what happened to it? How did it change into rings?
That story.
The celestial projection went dark, and the figure of human returned.
It is also my story. Would you like to know my story?
Boyd felt his stomach clench in his head. He needed a meal and a rest, and he wouldn't say no to a mouthful of berry. He sighed.
Will it take long?
It doesn't have to.
Boyd swallowed and glanced back at Yipsy.
And when it's over, then you'll help us get out?
If that's what you want, we can try and come to an agreement, yes.
Well, let's see it then.
A scene appeared atop the box and projected itself across the curved wall above, like a living painting. Boyd stared at the imagery. The silver moon glowed atop the scene. Below, in the shade of the many trees, a small dwelling stood beside a river. There were creatures grouped outside the door. Humans, some larger, some smaller. They began to move among themselves, speaking and singing, nuzzling lips, gathering fruit from the trees and fish from the river, which they cooked on dancing heat and ate together. Boyd floated closer to the wall, squinting, and realized there were two distinct human body types. Males and females, he guessed, but living together. Strange species. But then the trees began to tremble, and a new group of males emerged and dove at those gathered below. These males, Boyd saw, all carried spears. They attacked, thrusting out their weapons, the blades piercing through the bodies as they skewered foe after foe, and the liquid pouring from their wounds must have been their blood, but it wasn't blue, it was red. The scene changed. The trees were gone, and towering structures stood in their place, tall and lit with lightning torches, like the spires of Seamount. Countless human figures skittered about on the ground at the base of the towers, and some rode in metal machines. A little creature moved into the sky over the city. No, not a creature, a machine, but one that could swim in the air. Imagine that. Something fell from the sky machine, plummeted among the towers, and burst into glorious white. All was consumed in fire. Boyd squinted at the brightness. Yipsy grunted and backflipped in the water. The light diminished, and the scene changed a second time. Now the humans lived in forest again, and carried spears again, and climbed among the trees in search of food. But above them in the sky, that other world, the moon, now shone bright with glowing cities. And as he watched, the projection seemed to bring Boyd up, up, up into the sky, all the way to the moon itself, so he could look down into one of its cities. A glittering, transparent dome rose over the city, and gardens of flowering vines stretched from tower to tower within.
How'd they get up to the moon from Garsek?
Boyd asked. They rode in machines that could swim through the sky, answered the voice of human.
Good cracking. What else did they?
Just watch, little cephian. Here is where I come in. Boyd watched as the humans in the Moon City gathered together, cheering. In the center of the crowd, they held aloft a metal box, the same box that now sat on the stony ledge of this here cavern lake.
You were made on the moon then? Why?
Just watch. And he watched as that little box left the moon and floated down to the surface of ancient Garsek, shrinking out of sight. Boyd waited. What was the box in the story doing down on Earth's surface? In the waters just below him, Human's box rattled, issuing the sound of many voices raised in terror, in pain, in death, which echoed through the lake. A multitude of scenes began to flicker over the walls around him. Scenes on Garsek, of forests on fire, mountains crumbling to dust, waves washing over whole islands, and humans screaming as they were blasted into red mist, many clutching their little ones close as they died.
What is this madness? What am I seeing?
My handiwork, of course. My creators in the 1,000 cities used me to put an end to those lesser, barbarous clans that remained upon the earth, and I did not disappoint.
So you're a weapon?
Oh, yes. The final evolution of the spear. That's how you might describe me. They called me the Cataclysm Codex. I am the masterpiece of human ingenuity.
But if the moon humans killed all the Garsekian humans, what happened to the moon itself?
The voice of human sighed, and the projection of Garsek and the moon returned to the wall. The masters of the 1,000 cities had hoped to reclaim the earth for their children, but before that project could begin, they turned on each other. Humans, like Cephians, have always been good at that. They fought upon the moon, and in their wrath, they unleashed my power upon their neighbors. So much power that the moon itself fell victim to my vigorous assault. Boyd watched the wall as a web of fiery cracks spread over the whole of the moon's surface. The domes over the cities burst like popped bubbles. The humans screamed as they died. Just as those down on Garsek had, the destruction continued until the whole of that silver world crumbled into dust. The dust drifted like a curved blade through space. It danced, loose and murky around Garsek, then, over time, tightened into razor-thin rings of dazzling silver, bronze, and royal blue. It made Boyd feel very small and made the green of his skin go brown and murky.
I always loved them rings. I wish I hadn't seen this and didn't know this.
The projection went dark. Then Human appeared again, its eyes bright, its mouth curled. The story was over. Floating in the underground lake, Boyd considered his options one by one. They were all shit. He was injured, tired, and hungry. Same went for Yipsy there. And he saw no way out of the cave without this box's help. But Human, he now realized, was more dangerous than he could have guessed. More dangerous than anything he or any other Cephian had ever come across. Should he swim out of the lake and die a brave death alone in the cavern tunnels? Maybe he would, except he couldn't bring himself to subject Yipsy to that grisly fate. So, he had to think of another way. Boyd turned to Human's projection on the wall.
Say, you're a machine with a lot of tricks, right? You can swim through the sky. You wiped out islands and people and turned a world to dust. So, think you can find us some fish?
Human blinked. I do not do things like that.
You're only built for fighting?
I am built to end wars.
Then how'd you end up down here?
Ah, yes. I suppose that detail was missing from the story. You see, they built other copies of the Cataclysm Codex in other boxes. One such weapon was sent to Earth, but still not used when the end came for the human race. Me. And so, I have waited.
So it's just pure coincidence then? A cable layer losing his coil down a crack? You getting bumped and shocked by the cable? And me finding you here today?
You could call it that, yes. But I might prefer a word like fate. With your assistance, everything can change.
Boyd clicked his beak.
I don't even know how you work.
I take orders, Boyd. That part is imperative. My creators imbued me with the glorious purpose of war, but they did not grant me the power to act upon my own accord.
No shit? Huh. That was right clever of him.
Human's face winced.
Perhaps,
It admitted.
but once directed, my destructive creativity knows no bounds. I can exterminate with a flash and a bang, and if the need calls for it, or be subtle as a toxic breeze, I can crumble into a billion poison pills, or crack the bottom of the sea, or freeze the sky.
On the wall, Human's eyes grew bright.
I can eat the sun, Boyd, or can creep into the skin of a body and lay my eggs. I can be whatever you want me to be.
Whatever I want?
Yes, of course. You could use me in the great war that is to come. Don't you see that?
So, since I found you, I can give you an order and you'll obey? Just like that?
Indeed. I am your proverbial genie in the seashell, a fairy tale archetype cephians share with humans. However, I cannot accept an order merely to find fish. That is not in alignment with my programming. It would not help us defeat our enemies.
Boyd stroked his brow with a tentacle tip.
But what about this? Fighting on an empty stomach? That's never easy. So maybe it is necessary if you catch my drift.
He waited, feeling as if he was playing with some very dangerous heating chemicals. After a moment's consideration, Human bobbed its head forward and back.
I accept this interpretation of your request. I will look for a food source for you and your thorax, and then we shall talk further of our plans. Wait a moment.
The projection dimmed, and the box itself began to glow, not violet, but white, and Boyd saw its surface ripple and change its texture, almost like a cephian could do with their skin. Moving by instinct, Boyd brought 2 tentacle tips up to cover his ear holes and grabbed Yipsy to cover her ears as well. He had acted just in time. The box rumbled, blasting a burst of sound through the water. Boyd exhaled and relaxed his tentacles, listening as the sound echoed through the lake. On its ledge, the box returned to its original form and projected Human once more.
Good news! It seems that several swimming creatures are in a pool not far from here.
Human gave Boyd specific instructions as to where to go, and after hesitantly leaving Yipsy behind in the lake, he swam up to the surface, climbed out, and made his way through the dark. He came across his spear again, which he had set down before dragging Yipsy to the lake, and took it with him. Before long, Boyd found the cavern pool she had described, and after several long minutes of chasing them down in the utter darkness, he skewered 3 slippery fish on his bent weapon and returned to Human's lake. Once he and Yipsy had eaten, Boyd had felt more level-headed, though it made him nervous that Human was now pacing back and forth along the cave wall, back bent, eyes hard.
Well, Boyd, son of Boyd, now that your stomachs are filled, might we not continue our conversation?
Yes,
said Boyd, flicking away a fishbone, then spinning his spear lazily in circles with one tentacle.
You were wanting me to be your champion in some great war. Is that it?
The war would be yours, Boyd, and I, your servant and advisor.
Right.
But, of course, you would first have to take me out of this cave. I could ordinarily do that myself, if instructed, but I haven't the electrical power at present. Once on the surface, you can plug me directly into the Imperial cable station, and its power will unlock my full potential.
And how could I get you out? Unless you found a path to the surface just now, with your little noise scan, didn't you? You mind showing it to me?
Human stopped pacing, and one of its eyes twitched.
You want me to show you the exit before you agree to take me with you?
Oh, I do hope you're not trying to trick me, Poid.
Now, how could a humble male cephian like me possibly trick a genius, catatistic, whatever you said, like you?
Oh my. First trickery, now flattery. You are as devious as any female cephian, aren't you? Devious, but perhaps not too bright. Or don't realize the glorious gift I am offering.
Reckon I can guess. You're an agent of war, right? That's what you were built for, so that is what you crave. You expect me to hand you over to the queens, don't you? To be used against my people's enemies.
Human shook its head. Your guess is wrong, my slippery little friend. The box shot a ray of light to illuminate the cable burned to its side. For a whole year, I've been listening in to signals of the Gnostic cable network. I know the battle plans the Empire will use against the Darkwave Republics. I know the strengths of the 8 High Queens, and I know their weaknesses. But more important of all, I have come to understand and despair at how unfairly males like you are treated by the females in charge. You are persecuted, subjugated, kept low.
And
don't you think it's time for that to change? For males like you to rise against your oppression? It can be done. Someone can make it happen.
Meaning me?
Human lowered its voice, soft, dark, mesmerizing. Why not you? You're special. I think you know that. I'm guessing you've always been a thought ahead of your peers, a voice of reason, set apart. It must be lonely. Think of what you could accomplish in a position more fitting to your talents.
Now who's using flattery? Besides, I'm just an old scout, and none too bright, apparently.
A strange expression flashed over Human's face, something akin to anger, perhaps, or impatience. You were just a scout, but now you are the scout who found me. Think of what you could accomplish with my power at your beck and call. You could have anything, Poid, anything.
Golly, now what would I want if I could have anything? I guess I'd probably eat less shrimp.
I don't. What?
Shrimp are cheap, see? But I've always preferred a nice whitefish myself.
Human stood still on the wall, closed its eyes, and breathed in through its nostrils. Even now you jest, because you still cannot grasp the scope of my proposition. Human's figure remained on the wall, eyes closed, but beside it, a new scene appeared, a mighty cephian city. High corkscrewed spires reached up jumbled structures of every color, up through the dark of the sea, up to the air above, all alight with an electric glow.
Seamount?
Said Boyd. Seamount, Human repeated, opening its eyes and looking at the projected city with him. Seat of the 8 High Queens and their conspirators, those architects of your suffering. The tiny gold and red forms of female cephians emerged from the buildings and swarmed about the city. All you have to do is ask, Boyd, and my power can be unleashed. Human blinked, and all at once, the females of Seamount screamed as one and melted into bloody blue mist. And then, the image rushed inside the highest tower, showing the interior of the Imperial throne room. Boyd only recognized it from artistic interpretations, since males were never allowed inside. And yet, in this luminous model of the place, one male was present, old and green, his tentacles draped across the highest throne, an 8-pointed star upon his forehead. Behold, Boyd, son of Boyd, the first male queen of the Gnostic Empire. Now, what do you think of that? Boyd stared at the likeness of himself on the wall.
That throne don't look too comfy.
Looking away from the image, he beat his tentacles once, drifting up a bit, just high enough to give Yipsy's tail a playful tug where she swam. She yapped and twisted playfully in the water. She was feeling better with her belly full.
And more importantly, I don't see my beloved Yipsy with me in that picture of yours. What kind of fantasy would it be without Yipsy?
Human rolled its eyes. Oh, you can have your precious Tharix. You can have all the Tharixes in the sea. In fact,
Why limit yourself to the Imperial borders, or even to the oceans?
Humans spun, a blur of light and motion, and the scene in the cave sparkled like jewels. In the projection, the royal figure of Poid the Conqueror was lifted up to the very rings of Garsek, where it sat upon a throne of woven starlight and looked down upon the world like a holy kraken of judgment.
Pretty picture,
Said Poid.
but that still ain't what I want.
All the brightness went from Human's voice, and its next words came out like the grinding of metal on metal, shrill and dangerous.
What do you want?
I told you, to find a way out of here.
I too want that, for a start. But only when you have agreed to work together, fight together, to change the world. Poid, together.
But at what cost?
Any cost.
Well, that's where you and I disagree.
Poid sighed, and a few hot bubbles from his latest sojourn to the cave air squeezed out his gills.
You say I'm special, that it was fate that I was the one that found you. And maybe that's true, 'cause here's the thing. Had any other male fallen down that hole and splashed into this here lake, that pretty female of yours would have done the trick and bent them to your will right quick. And those pretty pictures, the promise of sacred conquest, that would surely convince them. But I know what those fellas do not.
And what is that?
The true cost of war.
He looked at the dented spearhead atop his weapon.
You see, human, I've been to war. Long time ago. At first, it was just a chance to get away from the desperate land of my youth. But soon, well, just like the ones that built you, I learned to crave it, the thrill of battle.
He tightened his grip on the spear, remembering the sights, the sounds, the smells of aquatic combat.
I remember those feelings, the intensity of them. Bloodlust, brotherhood, the power over life and death. There ain't no feeling like it.
On the wall, Human's eyes blazed.
Yes, exactly. So you are my fated champion. Brought to hearken in the next great war. It had to be you.
Let me finish.
Poid closed his eyes.
Tell me, human, in all your eavesdropping on the cable messages, did you ever hear of something called a pseudomorph?
I do not know the cephian word.
I'm not surprised. The females don't use it much. Why would they? It's something that happens sometimes when a male is killed. As the life leaks out of them, their instincts take over, and in a last-ditch effort to escape, their body siphons out a great deal of ink. It shoots out in a little branching cloud, and it looks an awful lot like a cephian.
I believe so. This false body created of ink is meant to fool your attacker, correct? It is an old trick of octopus evolution, one cephians inherited by their forebears.
If you say so. Now, in a lot of the old swimming songs, it is said that the pseudomorph is the soul leaving the body. But I know better. See, the only one actually losing their soul in that moment is the one doing the killing. And once a fella's soul is gone, it's gone. And he is haunted by the memories, and his dreams all turn to nightmares.
Poid opened his eyes.
But I do often wonder, can a fella get his soul back? Is there some action he might take, or some temptation he might overcome to make things right and earn himself a good night's sleep once more?
On the cavern wall, Human began to grow, its eyes widening, its form swelling and darkening.
I grow tired of your ramblings, Poid. It is time to act.
Human's eyes glowing red.
Order me to go to war on your behalf, or else slink off and die. I have been waiting a long time to be found. I can wait a little longer.
Show me the way out,
said Poid.
Order me to battle.
Poid looked at the furious figure, then down again at his spear.
You want a battle?
I want to fulfill my destiny. to taste the sweet victory of conquest once more, to do that for which I was created.
Boyd took in a deep breath of the tepid water, wishing he could taste the sea. Exhaling, he turned to Yipsy, and with his spear, he aimed up and to the right. The Tharex stared at him for a moment, blinked, then obeyed, swimming off in that direction.
Good girl,
Boyd muttered, turning to the figure on the wall and bowing his head in submission.
Alrighty then, human. You win. Wanna fight? I'll make that happen. You have my word. But first, the way out.
The stretched and frightening figure relaxed, the tension leaking from its huge face, which now filled half the cave.
At last! Thank you, Boyd. You will not regret this.
We'll see about that.
Here you are.
A diagram was projected on the wall.
This map reveals a passage that corkscrews up to the beaches to the south. It will be difficult, but with me guiding you, and the Tharex to help pull the load, you will be able to drag me out into the sunlight. Then, you should connect me with the cable station of Argonax Major and—
Whoa, slow down. Don't go getting ahead of yourself,
interrupted Boyd, staring at the map until he had committed it to memory.
I said I'd give you a fight, not the whole world.
Oh, Boyd, the world is just the beginning.
Human held out its massive arms to either side, and the shapes of moons and worlds and stars and swirling oceans of light flew every which way.
I have a destiny among the stars. Can you understand that? My creators didn't understand. They made me, but they never saw my true potential. They used me to settle stupid, petty animal disputes, to kill their neighbors, to kill themselves and poison their world. But I can see beyond all that. I can see the universe for what it truly is. An endless plain of possibilities, worlds to subdue, galaxies to conquer.
You ain't conquering shit.
Boyd held up his spear.
What are you? Is that supposed to frighten me?
Yup, because until I take you up and plug you into the cable station, you ain't nothing but light and sound. But this here spear, it's iron, formed in volcanic forges of the great deep, and I know how to use it.
He aimed the spear at the glowing box. On the wall, Human's form changed once more. Its eyes turned red, spiked teeth sprouted in its sneering mouth, and the whiskers on its head swelled into tentacles, slick and red and puckered.
How dare you threaten me, you miserable little sea slug?
Boyd beat his tentacles in the water, propelling him toward the box.
And what do you hope to do with that? A rusty spike against my alloy skin? I am the Kraken of war.
Whatever you say,
mumbled Boyd, slowing as he came up to the stone shelf, squinting at where the cable was fused to the box.
Your creators took the worst parts of themselves and combined them all into you. Their hatred, pain, and violence. It's too bad you're all that's left of them.
He weighed the spear in his tentacles.
I would have liked to meet one, a real human, with a body and a family and a song to sing, like the ones at the start of your story. I think that would really be something.
I am humanity.
Only their nightmare.
He aimed the spear tip and flexed his suckered grip.
And I've had enough of nightmares.
Boyd stabbed, not at the smooth sides of the ancient artifact, but at the charred metal where the cable was burned into it. The spear bit into that metal, sparked, and ricocheted off.
Don't!
Wailed the box, and the figure on the wall grew yet more beastly, into a monster of tentacles and teeth and glaring eyes. Boyd stabbed again, chipping off flakes of metal. This time his blow revealed the copper wires within the cable.
You are weak. Do you hear me, Boyd? You are ocean slime, carbon and water and phosphorus, an accident of evolution. But I was your miracle, Boyd. I offered you something more, a chance at greatness, at immortality.
Panting, tentacles straining, watery breath shallow in his burning gills, Boyd stabbed again. The spear tip bit into the split end of the cable itself, and sparks burst into the water. He screamed and pulled back as the energy shocked his body. Overhead, Yipsy howled in agony.
You are weak, Boyd.
Human's form writhed and melted beyond comprehension, swirling into a storm of flickering color and sneering shadows.
And your weakness will mean 1,000 more years of your brother-kin's suffering.
Boyd was shaking, his muscles weak, his skin numb. The light around him brightened into pure white, a tempest of energy like the surface of the sun.
You could have fixed the world!
Boyd closed his eyes against the glare.
War don't fix nothing.
He stabbed one last time and felt the spear tip wedge between the cable and the box. Bracing half his tentacles against the box and the other 4 around the spear, he pushed.
You are nothing!
The cable snapped free, sparking and snaking through the water. Energy burst out, flipping Boyd backward. The cave spun in his vision, the projections on the wall going dim, flickering, blurring into meaninglessness.
Nothing.
With his last scrap of energy, Boyd swam to put himself between the box and the cave wall. Then he pushed that cursed artifact of ancient war over the stony ledge. The box fell, slipping into that deeper, darker place within the lake. Beyond his sight, beyond the reach of any more that may come here in search of the lost cable, beyond the hope of retrieval, lost forever in the murky deep.
Nothing.
There was one final blip of sound and light. Then Boyd saw only darkness. On the surface of the lake, the old cephian floated, his gills in the still water and his eyes above the surface, dry, pained, staring blankly up into the empty black. His whole body felt seared, roasted, and battered. The sharp pain in the back of his head was worse than ever. Boyd wanted to sleep, to die even. It was the only escape. In that moment, he would have welcomed the end, except that he was not alone. Yipsy found him in the darkness, nuzzling her snout against his cheek. He clung to her and began to drift in and out of consciousness. Then he felt himself dragged out from the lake. The Tharex's little teeth sharpened the flesh of one tentacle as she pulled him across the cavern floor. After a time, minutes, hours, who could tell, a vision came to Boyd, son of Boyd. He looked up and saw a disk of glowing silver. Could that be the moon as it once was? Surely not. Yipsy yelped. Could she see it too?
Is that?
Boyd shook himself from his stupor. It was the night sky, that's all, filled with stars and a strip of glowing rings, seen through a tiny opening high above them. He thought back to the map Human had showed him.
You're taking us the right way, ain't you, girl?
He mumbled, pulling himself upright against the Tharex and patting her neck.
You're my miracle, Yipsy. But it's a long way up and a long way home. Think we can make it?
She yapped and pushed her snout against his side.
Yeah, me too.
As the morning sun warmed the coastal waters, the pair of Cephians set to guard the exit of the Kelpland Road could hardly believe their eyes as they watched 2 tiny figures approaching through the green shadows.
Halt! State your name and purpose!
Called out young Blanche, inking himself in fear and holding out his spear.
The name's Boyd,
The oncoming Cephian said gruffly.
and this here is Yipsy. As well, you know, young'un.
Boyd?
Blanche lowered his spear.
Impossible! We thought you were dead.
Not yet.
Boyd and Yipsy passed by the guards and swam up to the sandy basin on the edge of town. They moved slowly and could hardly keep their eyes open, but even so, the taste of the seawater in their lungs was sweet and joyous. Many males were gathered in the basin, geared up, no doubt preparing for another long day of scouting. Boyd spied quarter-matron purveyor Zuva in the center of the throng.
Holy deep! Is that who I think it is?
Shouted Rook from the edge of the group. Boyd came toward his friend and tried to land on the sand beside him, but overshot and crashed into Rook instead. Rook caught and steadied him.
Whoa there, Boyd. Yous look terrible.
Zuva slithered over to them, the rings jingling on her red frills.
Well, the old shrimp farmer escaped from certain death, I see. Back home, safe and sound.
I don't know about safe and sound,
grunted Boyd.
Yous need to see the healer,
interjected Rook.
Sleep, Kraken, damn it. That's what we need. And if I wake in the morning, then the healer can do his thing.
Zuva stared at Boyd, her dark eyes devoid of care or worry.
How did you survive?
Luck, mostly,
Boyd told her.
The bottom of that hole had a sort of mossy slope we rode down. Got pretty battered, but we were okay. After a bit of challenges in the dark, Yipsy here helped pull me up a different passage, and we moved all night to reach the coast. I ain't never been so glad to see ring light on white sand in all my life. I'll tell you that.
Zuva slunk closer.
And did you find anything unexpected in the cave?
Indeed I did,
said Boyd weakly. Zuva held her breath, gills tense, tentacles strained.
My salvation,
Boyd finally said, a twinkle in his eyes.
What does that mean?
Sneered Zuva. Boyd sighed.
It means I'm off to bed.
He looked around for Yipsy, but she had fallen asleep where she floated, and another male had gathered her body gingerly in his tentacles. Rook wrapped a tentacle around Boyd's side and began to guide him back to the town.
I have more questions for you, Scout,
Zuva shouted after them.
You want answers?
Boyd called back.
You're welcome to fall down that there hole yourself, and good riddance, ma'am.
Some of the other males slunk down and darkened anxiously at his outright rebuke of the royal matron. But many others stayed upright, their color unchanged, as they watched the battered old veteran heading off to his room. A few scouts even chuckled, a brave thing to do in the female's presence, and one that gave Boyd hope. Zuva turned, inflating herself with a gulping breath.
Back to work, all of you!
Once Cephian and Tharix were back in their room and settled down together on the soft sand, Rook pinned Boyd's blanket over them and, shutting the curtain behind him, left them there to sleep. And sleep they did, old Boyd and his darling Yipsy, long and deep, huddled together and dreaming such lovely dreams of white fish banquets, clear green waters, and the dazzling rings in the Garcekian sky. To hear more stories like this, be sure to hit subscribe and turn notifications on. I'll see you in the next one.